performance against Arizona State. Kudos to Arizona State, first and foremost. They had 5 sacks. The defense came ready to play. And we talked about in the preview video, we talked about Arizona State's defense being able to slow down some really good teams. We talked about where their defense may not be elite, their defense is the strength of their team. They slowed down Caleb Williams at times. Now, USC ended up scoring 42 points against them. I think Williams had 5 total touchdowns. But I think they had like 2 quarters without scoring a point. So Arizona's defense plays pretty stout and plays pretty hard. And you were watching the game yesterday. It's on Pac-12, so we had to illegally stream it. But go back and try to find the game on YouTube if you can. But that place was rocking. Like, it was a pretty hostile environment. So kudos to Arizona State, right? All right, so let's talk Shedeur Sanders now. 26-42, 239 yards passing, 1 touchdown. And we're going to dive into some numbers and some details, but kind of like how we talked about with Dylan Gabriel, like my biggest takeaway from Sanders, especially in this game, but if you look the whole season, is just situational awareness, a situational football player. You want to be successful. You want to be better in situations that matter than in situations that maybe don't matter, just in between the 20s and you can't score, right? Or you can play whenever there's not pressure, but when pressure's on, you can't, right? My biggest takeaway from Sanders is situational football, something that he's excellent at doing and has been excellent so far showing, right? When the situations matter, when a big play needs to happen, he's able to make those plays happen. And these are the type of games I think make you great. And not of course, the big games against the USCs and TCU at the beginning of the game, right? Like, at the beginning of the season, like, of course, those big games make you great, and that helps. But the games that maybe don't get as much hype, like this game here, the games that maybe you don't have your A game, the team doesn't have your A game, you're off to a slow start again. Arizona State just tied it up at the end of the game. You're like, they have all the momentum. These games make you great where you can just click, right? This is the Tom Brady effect, the Tom Brady mode. Not to compare it to Tom Brady again or kind of, overuse that phrase that's been thrown around, Brady, go Brady, or whatever it is, but it really is where the game can not be going so great, then all of a sudden it just clicks. That's what I think happened with Shedeur Sanders yesterday in Arizona State. He just found a way to win yesterday. So let's talk a little more about it, because there's obviously pressure again. But the fourth quarter, of course, the fourth quarter is going to get talked about. You had some really big third down conversions. You had 13 points in the fourth quarter, excuse me. You had that big drive at the very end, the big play at least, that led to the game-winning field goal. But in my opinion, where they won that game was the touchdown drive right before the first half ended. That's where I think Colorado won the game. And that's an example of the situational football. Like, when it matters, when they scored. So they scored right before the first half ended, big situation. And then the very end of the game, Sanders was able to hit that deep throw at the beginning of the drive, and that got them into field goal range, and then they were able to kick the field goal. Those situations matter. But I think that drive by Sanders and the team, of course, but led by Sanders at the end of the first half, is a reason why, or one of the biggest reasons why they won. Because nothing was really working offensively for the Buffs, right? Like Arizona State, we talked about their defense, they played great. Nothing was really working for Colorado. I think they only had 56 yards rushing on like 30-something attempts. And Sanders was sacked 5 times, so I think he had negative 17 because of all those sacks. So even if you give those numbers back, even if you give those sack yardage back, you still have 70-something yards rushing on 30-something attempts, or 30-something carries. So just nothing was really working. They weren't able to really get into a rhythm. It was almost like the Colorado State game, right? Not able to get into a rhythm. Their offense has been so successful in certain things, it wasn't clicking. Like the deep balls that Sanders is so good at, 20 yards or more downfield, they were only 2 of 8. But the situation, right? One of those throws was that last drive that led to the game-winning field goal. So that's what I mean when I talk about situational football. While nothing's really working, but when it did is when it mattered. But again, only 2 of 8 for 20 yards downfield. 5.7 yards per attempt was the lowest of the season by far, maybe except against Oregon. So don't quote me on that. Go back and check Oregon, but I'm pretty sure it was the lowest of the season. If not, it was the second lowest. But when it mattered, he was able to find a way. And I think the biggest takeaway, the biggest questions, I think, after this game is you still have to find a way against the pressure. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not that smart. Just some random guy on YouTube talking, right? But this was the first game, like Shedeur Sanders, again, take away Oregon. This is the first game, besides Oregon, that Shedeur Sanders wasn't able to have the success he usually has under pressure. He's been really good under pressure because they've had a lot of pressure. I think almost 40% of his dropbacks he was under pressure. I think it was 39 point something. And he was only 4-14 throwing for 45 yards. Now, every quarterback their level of play is going to be lower against pressure. But Sanders, a lot of his numbers have looked like, I think, going into the last week, he was like 21 of 35 against pressure, touchdowns, like pushing the ball downfield successfully, like having a lot of success against pressure in his face. But this was the first game that there was just not a lot of success came from it, right? They got pressure without blitzing. So they only blitzed 10% of his dropbacks, but they got pressure nearly 40% of the dropbacks. They were getting pressure with just 4 guys. So I think you got to find a way, whether it's getting the ball out quick, push the ball downfield early, like whatever it is. I mean, we talk about it every week. We'll probably talk about it again this week, but you got to find a way to slow down the pressure, whatever it looks like. But still, they found a way to win. Kudos to Arizona State for playing hard. Kudos to Shedeur Sanders and Colorado offense for finding a way to win in just situational football. Like the play action wasn't able to get going because the run game wasn't able to get going. So it was, again, relying on Shedeur Sanders, just straight dropbacks to win. He was able to find a way. So, again, biggest takeaway for Shedeur Sanders is situational football, being elite when the situations call for it. That's exactly what he was able to do. All right, if you're watching this video still, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and let us know in the comments below your thoughts. If you're